going back to your earlier point, people in Western countries sometimes find it harder to understand why Bitcoin is important because the status quo monetary system seems to work most of the time. I mean, it has problems that they occasionally see, and they, get a taste of inflation. They don't really like it, but for the most part, it seems to work. It's people from places like Argentina and Venezuela that really, if you explain Bitcoin to them, they get it very quickly. In terms of medium of exchange use of Bitcoin, in my book, I talk about how money goes through an evolution to becoming a fully fledged money. It starts off as a collectible, it becomes a store of value as more people adopt it, and it becomes widely adopted. Once it's fully adopted, then it becomes suitable as a medium of exchange because the purchasing power will stabilize and you won't have this wild volatility anymore. And then when it's widely used as a medium of exchange and goods are priced in terms of it, it becomes the unit of account. You go to a grocery store and you'll see prices in terms of it. The problem with using Bitcoin as a medium of exchange is what you said, it's the volatility, and the volatility is a function of the adoption increasing. And adoption increases in these kind of waves or cycles. And it's not a smooth process. It's not this linear process that some people seem to expect will happen, like that the price will just go up in this very predictable linear way. That's not how markets work at all. Markets get ahead of themselves and markets panic. But adoption has been growing pretty steadily over that process. Now, given that Bitcoin is volatile, there is this opportunity cost of using it in exchange. If you buy something with Bitcoin and you relinquish your Bitcoin and the price goes up, you've lost that opportunity of the price appreciation. And people kind of have learnt this over time, people who have been in Bitcoin a long time. And there's this famous story of someone who spent 10,000 Bitcoin to buy two pizzas in the early days. And that kind of really signifies the downside of spending your Bitcoin is that those 10,000 Bitcoin are worth what, like $400 million today. They're worth a lot of money.
Hmm.
And I'm sure the person who bought the pizzas would rather have those 10,000 Bitcoin now rather than the two pizzas that they ate, over a decade ago. There are places where the transaction costs of using the regular currency are so high that it still can make sense to use Bitcoin in exchange. There are parts of the world that are so impoverished and don't have a good currency where it can make sense to use it in exchange. Or, for instance, it was used a lot in the early days in illicit drug markets like Silk Road, because that's an example where there's huge transaction costs to using a regular currency. Like, imagine trying to pay for drugs using PayPal. The transaction cost is that you go to jail because it's very easy to trace you. So people thought, hey, I'll use Bitcoin and I'll forfeit the appreciation because I can buy these drugs and I can do it at less risk to myself. Obviously, now we've learned that it doesn't really help you to use Bitcoin. You can still be tracked down and arrested. But the general point here is that while Bitcoin is becoming a store of value, it doesn't make sense to use it as a medium of exchange because you're relinquishing the upside that you get from holding the store of value into the future.